A champion once again. Andy Murray wins Wimbledon for the second time.
He's there. Straight sets again.
He beat Canadian Milos Raonic to win the third Grand Slam title of his career. After disappointment in recent tournaments, this was a victory for the new champion to savour.
I had some great moments here and also some tough losses, and obviously the wins feel extra special because of the tough losses. So yeah, I'm proud to have my hands on the trophy again.
We'll be looking back at Andy Murray's journey and at what this means for British tennis. Also tonight, Angela Eagle prepares to launch her bid for the Labour leadership, but Jeremy Corbyn urges her to reconsider. More protests in the United States against police shootings of black men. Good evening. Britain has a homegrown Wimbledon champion once again after Andy Murray delivered a straight sets win on centre court to take the men's singles title for the second time in his career. His victory over Canadian Milos Raonic was also his third Grand Slam title. After a series of losses in the last 3 years, he said today that this win at Wimbledon felt extra special. Our sports correspondent Jo Wilson was watching the match.
There is one man in British sport who exceeds the roof of expectation. Remember the decades when a British finalist walking out here seemed like a fantasy, and then consider the ability and the strain of concentration it takes to win Wimbledon twice. Who'd dispute that Andy Murray's the greatest British player to take to a tennis court? Against Milos Raonic, Murray was taking on the biggest server at Wimbledon this year. But if tennis was just a question of who can hit the ball the hardest, it would never captivate us. Points are often won by repeating precision until someone makes a mistake. One Murray break, that was the first set. Murray was everywhere. As he scampered like a teenager on court, at key moments Raonic appeared hesitant. Second set went to a tie-break, but it went to Murray, who won points he had no right to.
Oh, you're joking, that's two.
Reasons for the Hill to be cheerful? Well, Andy Murray 2 sets up, and the sun quite often shining. Not a spare place to be had back there.
The Raonic tactic was clear: dash to the net and use his telescopic reach. At times it worked, but he couldn't break Murray's serve. It was a third set tie-break. Raonic won just 2 points in it. From start to finish, from corner to corner, Murray was in control. Until the moment when he allowed himself to let himself go.
Most important tournament for me every year. You know, I had some great moments here and also some tough losses, and obviously the wins feel extra special because of the tough losses. So yeah, I'm proud to have my hands on the trophy again.
He was playing so well. He was so solid off the ground. He was really strong on serve, and I just felt confident that he was going to get the job done somewhere.
If it helps to compare eras with numbers, in a time when tennis was closed to professionals, Fred Perry won 3 Wimbledons. Murray now has 2. Perry reached 10 Grand Slam finals, Murray now 11. But Murray's era has featured Nadal, Djokovic and Federer. He's never yet been officially ranked above all of them.
It's going to be a very interesting run-in with the Olympics, US Open and then World Tour finals at the end of the year, and that's a goal that Murray hasn't achieved, to be world number 1. He's been number 2 for so long, and I think this can be a stepping stone for him being on top of the world.
Wow, this guy is amazing. He's beaten the best in the world over and over again. He's won the biggest tournaments, the ones just below the Grand Slams. I mean, maybe more than Agassi, Sampras. So he's truly a great sportsman, and definitely one of the best we've had in this country.
It's Murray's fortune that he has something to make the ice bath bearable, as he posted on social media. And it's Wimbledon's great fortune that for a fortnight it's witnessed this man in the form of his life.
And we can join Jo live from Wimbledon now. Where does this take Murray, do you think, Jo, in terms of Britain's sporting greats?
Michelle, I think that's the kind of question which is always answered by personal preference. There might be people thinking of all those gold medals won by Hoy, by Redgrave, and thinking really that exceeds what Murray has done. I think what we can say about tennis, though, is that it's a truly global game in a golden era. Certainly in men's singles with global attention and global participation. Plenty of former champions have said today, look, no reason why Murray can't come back and win Wimbledon again, win other Grand Slam tournaments. In terms of British tennis, it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking because Murray's reached so many finals, it's almost become routine. Really, it isn't. Now, he is an inspirational figure. We've seen that in the Davis Cup. But if you look, some signs of encouragement, certainly, but nobody really in men's or women's singles in Britain you can really point to and think, yeah, they can take up where Murray leaves off maybe in a few years' time. You know, it might not happen again for decades. So really, I think, Michelle, as night descends on Wimbledon, all we can really do is just revel in the here and now.
Joe Wilson, live from Wimbledon. Thank you. And we'll have news of the day's other British sporting successes later in the programme. The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has urged Angela Eagle, until recently a member of his senior team, to think again about challenging him for the leadership. She'll formally launch her bid tomorrow, saying that she wants to reunite the party. But Mr Corbyn says it would be irresponsible of him to stand down. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth reports.
251,000. Less than a year ago, Jeremy Corbyn was elected Labour's leader with an overwhelming majority.
Any chance we could start?
Since then, around the country, supporters have welcomed his promise of a new politics. But in Parliament, dissatisfaction's grown. Many Labour MPs have quit senior roles, questioning his leadership. Now, after several threats, one will stand against him, launching her challenge for his job tomorrow, today explaining why.
We need a strengthened Labour Party and an opposition that can unite so we can heal the country, and unfortunately I just don't think Jeremy can do that job.
Mr Corbyn, is it all over for you now?
Not according to him. Jeremy Corbyn said today he's disappointed at this challenge to his leadership and again said he will stand in any contest.
Why should I time limit a leadership when I've been elected by a very large number of members and supporters in order to lead this party? If at the end of the day an election somewhere results in a different leader, so be it. But I would be irresponsible if I walked away from a mandate that I was given and a responsibility I was given. I ask colleagues to respect that as well.
There is a divide between many Labour MPs here who say they've lost faith in their leader and the wider party where he still has much support. The crucial question is whether Jeremy Corbyn can automatically stand in a leadership contest without the backing of a number of MPs. Labour's rules aren't clear. It's up to its executive committee to decide.
Along with Jeremy Corbyn, we're here to stay.
And with thousands of activists rallying to support Jeremy Corbyn, MPs know if he can stand, he might win, cementing his authority. If he's not on the ballot, that could cause a revolt among members. And Jeremy Corbyn's hinted at a legal challenge. For many, this is a pivotal moment for Labour.
Unless Labour can unify after the leadership election that is coming, our voice will not be heard. If we can't address Labour voters' concerns about the economy, about inequality and what's going to happen now that we've voted to leave the European Union, we will be left for dead as a political party.
Some fear Labour could split, others fear this deep-rooted division places the party's very future in doubt. Well, Angela Eagle will launch her leadership campaign tomorrow and Labour's National Executive Committee is expected to meet on Tuesday to set the rules of this contest, including whether Jeremy Corbyn can stand without the backing of 51 MPs and MEPs. Meanwhile, Angela Eagle is already urging people to join the Labour Party, perhaps to counter a recent surge in new members, which many people think could be Jeremy Corbyn's supporters. Amid this conflict, there is one point of consensus. Labour figures agree that while the Conservatives are engulfed in their own leadership contest, this is the time for Labour to be a strong, united opposition. They disagree on who should lead it, and with both sides seemingly entrenched, this is shaping up to be a brutal battle, which will get underway in earnest tomorrow.
Alex Forsyth in Westminster, thank you. A cross-party group of senior MPs is calling for Tony Blair to be censured for his role in taking Britain to war in Iraq. Following the publication of the Chilcot report, they say they want a vote in the Commons to decide whether the former Prime Minister is guilty of contempt of Parliament and misleading MPs. Mr Blair's apologised for mistakes he made, but has said he stands by his decisions. More than 200 people have been arrested in the US states of Louisiana and Minnesota amid continuing public anger and protests about police shootings of black men. There have been rallies in many US cities, most of them peaceful, and President Obama has urged both protesters and police to show respect and restraint. From Baton Rouge in Louisiana, our correspondent Laura Bicker reports.
After a week of uneasy tension on the streets of Baton Rouge, police decided to take action. They arrested dozens of protesters, leading them away from the crowds. And then came this.
City police, you're under arrest. What? Don't fight me! Don't fight me! Don't fight me! I'm under arrest!
DeRay McKesson, a leader of the Black Lives Matter movement, was taken into custody while broadcasting online. Police say he was obstructing the highway.
They've gathered outside the police headquarters. It feels quite tense here at the moment. There is real anger here. In fact, it's not just anger, it's rage.
If your white mom or your white brother was shot down with 6 shots while he was laying on the ground, I promise you every single private school child, mom, grandma would be right out here and they would be cocked with guns in front of those white police faces.
In Minnesota, the peace that has prevailed at protests over the last week was shattered. 21 police officers were injured and there were over 100 arrests. President Obama, on a visit to Spain, tried to soothe this raw emotion and gave this advice.
Whenever those of us who are concerned about fairness in the criminal justice system attack police officers, you are doing a disservice to the cause.
Meanwhile, in Dallas, they're trying to heal and remember the 5 officers killed by a black activist. It's emerged that the gunman, Micah Johnson, taunted the police as they tried to stop him shooting. He laughed after hearing how many officers had been shot. Here, they know the gravity of the situation, but the way ahead is unclear.
We're at a tipping point, and we could go either way. And so it's important for us as a nation to try to figure out how do we not miss this moment.
We're putting our right fist up.
The protests and marches will continue in Baton Rouge and elsewhere. Most, like this one, are a peaceful show of strength.
What do we want? Justice! Now!
But in the feverish heat of summer, it's hard not to feel that this country is close to boiling point.
No justice, no peace.
Let's join Laura live in Baton Rouge now. She's at the scene of one of the recent shootings. How would you assess the mood, Laura, after days of anger and protest on this sort of scale?
Well, this is where Alton Sterling was killed by police nearly a week ago, and they've kept up a constant presence here since then. The mood here right now is calm, it's peaceful, but people here are determined. Alton Sterling's name has become synonymous with a call for justice, both here in Baton Rouge and right across the United States. When it comes to the protesters who were arrested last night, most of them have been freed, including the Black Lives Matter leader, DeRay McKesson. Now, he has questioned why he was taken into custody in the first place, and he's questioned police tactics. The Louisiana state governor has held a press conference within the last hour where he has defended officers here. He says the response has been appropriate, and he says he is listening to the voices. He says more has to be done to bring police and this community together. But he said that message that they're giving would be more meaningful if it remains peaceful.
Laura Bicker in Baton Rouge, thank you. The UN Security Council has met in emergency session to discuss a resumption of violence in South Sudan. Troops loyal to President Salva Kiir have been clashing with those commanded by Vice President Riek Machar since Thursday. It's reported hundreds of soldiers from both sides have been killed over 3 days of fighting. The family of Marie Colvin, the veteran Sunday Times correspondent killed in Syria, are suing the regime of President Assad, accusing it of a policy of deliberately killing journalists. Lawyers for the family say documents smuggled out of Syria show that the regime tracked Colvin before directing the artillery strike that killed her 4 years ago. A lawsuit's been filed in Washington. Paul Wood's report from there contains material that some viewers may find distressing.
In February of 2012, the Syrian regime was shelling the rebels of Baba Amma into submission. The area was cut off. The only way in was through an underground tunnel 2 miles long. Among the few foreign journalists to reach Baba Amma was Marie Colvin of the Sunday Times. Driven, gifted, celebrated by her peers. This was to be her last story.
There's a small clinic. You can't even really call it a clinic. It's an apartment. I mean, you have plasma bags hanging from coat hangers. I watched a little baby die today. The doctor just said, I can't do anything, and his little tummy just kept heaving until he died.
The Colvin family believed that broadcast was traced by Syrian intelligence and used to locate the Baba Amma media centre. An attack on the journalists was ordered that night, the family say. Marie Colvin and a French journalist, Remy Ochlik, were killed. Marie's photographer, Paul Conroy, was injured.
I will say to this day, there's no room for doubt that it was a professional attack, and the location wasn't an accidental strike on that building. Once they found it, they kept hitting it, which was also unusual. They just tended to move on in Baba Amra. So I've no doubt from the evidence then that it was a deliberate attack.
Documents obtained by the family's lawyers are said to show a policy first to arrest journalists, then later to kill them. Marie's death was an assassination, the Colvin family say. Those responsible, they say, include President Assad's brother, Maher, and the president's intelligence chief, Ali Mamlouk. The Deputy Defence Minister, Asif Shaukat, is said to have declared, "We could destroy Baba Amma in 10 minutes if there were no cameras."
I'm really proud to be able to bring the lawsuit. We know who Marie's killers are now. I want them brought to justice. I want them to be held accountable. I'm very sensitive to the suffering of the Syrian people, so I know I'm not the only one who's lost a sister. My mom is not the only one who's mourning the loss of her daughter.
It's quite possible that the Syrian government simply tries to ignore this lawsuit, and if so, the court won't get the chance to examine its claims. But the murder of journalists is just one war crime among many the Syrian regime stands accused of. The Colvin family hope the lawsuit will be a reminder of that, as some in the international community seek to rehabilitate President Assad. Paul Wood, BBC News, Washington.
And the case over the death of Marie Colvin was filed in a district court in Washington, D.C. today. Time now for the sport, including the dramatic end of Euro 2016. Ollie Foster's at the BBC Sports Centre. Ollie, busy day?
It certainly has been. Thank you, Michelle. The hosts were left heartbroken at the European Championship tonight. Portugal have won their first major tournament, beating France 1-0 in extra time. And they had to do it without their star player, Ronaldo, who was injured early on in the match. Our sports correspondent, Katie Gornall, was at the final.
After 50 games and 30 days, it's come down to 2 teams. This may be France's party, but Portugal were out to gatecrash. Inside, the Stade de France rippled with emotion. Just the sight of the hosts in the final has been cause for celebration for a country in need of a positive story. Injury saw him depart in the first half, his tournament ending in tears. Stunned, but there was no way back. After years of being football's nearly men, Portugal now knows what it means to win a major trophy. For some, it's a prize to cherish above all the rest.
So it's a sad end to the tournament for France, who didn't get the fairy tale that they wanted. But for Portugal to find a way through, even when their best player was on a stretcher, just tells you everything you need to know about their determination. They haven't always been pretty to watch, but they are now celebrating the biggest achievement in their national team's history, Ollie.
Katie, many thanks indeed. Katie Gornall there at the Stade de France. Now away from the Euros, one of the busiest weekends in the calendar has been brilliant for British sportsmen and women. Lewis Hamilton won his 4th British Grand Prix at Silverstone and is now just a point behind Nico Rosberg in the Drivers' Championship. His Mercedes teammate was demoted to 3rd after receiving prohibited team instructions about how to deal with a gearbox problem. Patrick Geary reports.
Silverstone's first test came from the skies. Rain makes staying fast and in control tougher than ever. So tough that this race started at a crawl. Queuing behind the safety car is fine if you're first, as Lewis Hamilton was. But eventually all would need to judge tactics and tyres, decisions that could turn your race back to front. Get those calls right, though, and on a drying track, the results could be spectacular. Max Verstappen's teenage daring took him past Nico Rosberg into 2nd. Rosberg and Hamilton had been told by their team to give each other space. Plenty of that here. Hamilton was some way down the road. His German rival was engaged in his own race against Verstappen. He passed him to go 2nd, but receiving these instructions
avoid 7th gear, Nico.
Cost him a time penalty and sent him back to 3rd. Silverstone's attention was on the Mercedes in front. For the 3rd year in a row, Lewis Hamilton is the winner of the British Grand Prix. Nowhere gives him a lift quite like home. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Well, there are actually 4 British winners at Wimbledon today. Following Andy Murray's victory, Heather Watson won the mixed doubles title on centre court with her Finnish partner Henri Kontunen. They'd never played together before this tournament. They beat the Colombian Robert Farah and Germany's Annalena Grönfeldt in straight sets. Top seeds Jordan Wiley and her Japanese partner Yui Kimiji won their 3rd wheelchair doubles title in a row after beating the Dutch 2nd seeds Griffin and Van Koot in straight sets. Gordon Reid also added the singles title to his doubles success yesterday. Great Britain finished 3rd in the medals table at the European Athletics Championships in Amsterdam. There were 2 golds on the final day. As all 4 relay teams finished on the podium, Desaulu, Jamili, Ellington and Uja got the baton round safely in the 4x100 metres, which hasn't always been the case for them. France was 2nd. And the women's quartet of Diamond, Anura, Doyle and Bundy Davis came home 1st in the 4x400 metres. Great Britain won a total of 16 medals, their highest tally at a European Championships in 58 years. And finally, 9 stages into the Tour de France, Chris Froome has retained the yellow jersey. That's all your sport, Michelle.
Ollie, thank you very much. A first look at tomorrow morning's newspapers is coming up next on the BBC News channel. On BBC One, it's time for the news wherever you are. Good night.